Good day. My name is Mike Smith. I'm the pastor at Ione Baptist Church in the state of Washington. Recently, one of my church members called me. They were disturbed by something they had read about how God is always changing. I didn't think much about it at first, but later God's Spirit spoke to me about the ramifications of such a thought. If God is always changing, then we have no stability in life or eternity. Although I never considered them to be prophets, my mind was taken back to the lyrics of an old song by the Young Rascals, which said, "How can I be sure in a world that's constantly changing? How can I be sure where I stand with you?" When it comes to the unchanging nature and character of God, the Bible is pretty clear. The psalmist wrote, "In the beginning you laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like a garment. Like clothing you will change them, and they will be discarded. But you remain the same, and your years will never end." That's Psalms 102, verses 25 through 27. And this passage tells us that God is not only eternal, but he is also unchanging. The New Testament echoes this thoughts in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 8, which says, "Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever." Why is this so important? Well, let's consider it first from a redemptive perspective. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 6, God says to his people, "I, even I, am the Lord, and I don't even begin to change. Therefore, you sons of Jacob, you are not consumed." Now, I want you to notice God is expressing his disappointment in his people over their disobedience. He even refers to them as the sons of Jacob, the supplanter, the deceiver, not Israel. Yet because of his unchanging nature and character, they are not destroyed. God's grace abides in spite of their rebellion because he never changes. Think about it. God's grace which saves us, that's Ephesians 2:8. God's grace which sanctifies us, that's Titus 2:11 and 12. God's grace which sustains us and enables us, both of those come from 2 Corinthians, is never lost due to God giving up or changing. Let's also look at God's unchanging quality in light of his plans and purposes for his people. Again, the psalmist wrote in Psalms 33:11, "But the plans of the Lord stand firm forever, the purposes of his heart through all generations." Here we see how the fact that God is unchanging gives hope to us in the midst of all of life's challenges. In the midst of this virus and this pandemic that we find ourselves in, we have hope because of the fact that God is unchanging. If God was always changing, then how could we draw strength from his promise, which says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." It is the fact that God is unchanging that allows him to work in all things for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. The fact that God never changes is what gives us hope in this life and also in the life to come. The fact that he is unchanging is also what gives us direction in this life. The Apostle James wrote in James chapter 1, verses 17 and 18, he says, "Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of the first fruits of all that he has created." The truth that folks need to grasp today is that it is not God who needs to change, but us. The Bible says that as we have borne the image of the earthly, so shall we also bear the image of the heavenly. And folks, that image is Christ. We need to reflect his compassion. We need to reflect his goodness. We need to reflect his desire to see lost people saved. That's why Romans 12:2 tells us that we need to be transformed. And Colossians chapter 3 verses 9 and 10 instructs us to put off the old man and to put on the new man, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. It's not God that has changed. It's we that need to change. We need to align ourselves with Christ and keep in step with the Master. And when he says in times of trouble, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the sick, that's what we need to do. Not exercise or worry about our freedoms or our partying or any inconvenience that we might suffer. Let each of us, it says in Philippians, think of the other before himself. For this was the mind of Christ that should also be reflected in us. It's not God that needs to change, children, it's us. We began this brief discussion with the Rascals asking, how can I be sure? Well, let me answer that question with the lyrics from another song. This one is by the group For Him, which says, he never changes. He's always the same. Throughout the ages, he always remains forever constant, forever a friend, forever faithful. His love knows no end. He never changes. He's always the same. And to that, we all need to be eternally thankful. God bless.